Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So today, I am bringing you a new item card, a tool card in fact, which is going to be coming out in Dragonstorm in Japan in the very near future, which means it will be part of our August set. But when a new card comes out, ladies and gentlemen, we take a good long look at that new card, and like a lot of new cards lately, our translation comes from LimitlessTCG.com, the lovely David Hochmann himself. Today, it's Dragonclaw. Now, we did see this on the Dragonstorm poster we looked at a little while ago. Honestly, we said it was probably going to be Dragonfang. Dragonclaw, pretty gosh darn close, but you know, look at the image we had to work with. What does it do? Well, if it is attached to a Pokemon, and that Pokemon is active, and that active Pokemon is damaged by your opponent's attack, you put 3 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. And straight away, this should make many of you think of Bursting Balloon. Now, it is in fact half of a Bursting Balloon. It puts 3 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon rather than putting 6 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. Having said that, Bursting Balloon was for a single turn. The second your turn ran out, or your opponent's turn ran out, I should say, Bursting Balloon went right away. So it was single use. So what we would often see with something like Bursting Balloon is your opponent would play something like a Lysander to attack a Pokemon on the bench, and then next turn your Bursting Balloon would be gone, and then they would never have to deal with it. That's not an option here with Dragonclaw. Dragonclaw stays on your Pokemon until either it's knocked out, or your opponent plays something like a Field Blower to get rid of that tool. It makes it far more likely your opponent is going to be hit for this damage. I mean, your opponent can always play a Guzma and attack a bench Pokemon, but they're still going to have to attack the other one sooner or later. Now, maybe they play a Guzma to attack a bench Pokemon, hoping to waste enough time to draw into a Field Blower to get rid of Dragonclaw before they have to attach the Pokemon with Dragonclaw attached. But ladies and gentlemen, that is awkward and messy, and it might work, but it's not something I think you can really rely on over and over again. And I feel very confident saying that Dragonclaw is a really good item, a really good tool, that is going to see a lot of play, because Bursting Balloon did. This is great, as was Bursting Balloon, for doing that little bit of extra damage. Now, of course, when we're talking about doing extra damage at the moment, we're talking about Choice Band. But we don't have anything like Muscle Band in the format at the moment. Most Pokemon tools played are Floatstone and Choice Band, and we'll talk more about general tools in a moment. But essentially, if you want to do extra damage to an EX or a GX, you whack a Choice Band on your Pokemon, and you're doing an extra 30 damage. If you want to do extra damage to a non-EX, non-GX, well, I mean, gutted to be quite frank. We don't have something like Muscle Band in the format at the moment. Now, the other thing to mention about Dragonclaw, it is one of these things that is in your opponent's control. Your opponent is the one who decides whether this is actually attached to your Pokemon when they attack. They can play something like a Field Blower to get rid of it, and if they do, it's gone. They can play something like a Guzma to attack a bench Pokemon. It's up to your opponent. Now, when I say it's up to your opponent, they might not have the cards. They might not have a Guzma. They might not have a Field Blower. But if they do, they can make sure that you're not actually giving them that extra damage. But what you're doing here is forcing your opponent to play around. And I'm sorry if this feels a little bit obvious and a little bit like I've said this too much, but how about playing this with Garbodor? When I look at this, Garbodor springs to mind brilliantly, because Garbodor does 20 damage for each tool in your opponent's discard pile. So essentially here, either your opponent takes the 30 damage, or they have to dig for something like a Field Blower, which is an extra item, which means you do an extra 20 damage, only 10 less than Dragonclaw, and a lot of the time, digging to try and find something like a Field Blower is going to cause your opponent to play more item cards, which makes them walk straight into Trashalanche. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a really fun way of using Garbodor here. Garbodor can really take advantage of this, because the only way for your opponent to avoid that extra damage is essentially to play item cards. So you're basically saying, look, either you take damage from Dragonclaw, or you play item cards to take more damage from Trash Avalanche. Either way, that is an interaction with which I can totally get on board. In terms of Pokemon to use it against, I mean Buzzwole here. How much fun is this against Buzzwole? Buzzwole does 30 damage to you with Jet Punch and takes 30 damage from Dragon Claw. Now they'll still do damage to the bench unless you're protecting it somehow. Let's say with a Mr. Mime. And it's all of a sudden saying, look, you want to sit there and do a little bit of damage with Jet Punch? Well, great news, I'm going to do a little bit of damage to you. If you've got a starting Pokemon, one that just goes out at the beginning of the game, think something like an Alolan Vulpix, that's going to just sit there and use Beacon. You stick a Dragon Claw on there, and all of a sudden, your opponent's got to take damage to get rid of a Pokemon that you're only really leaving there to set up. Alolan Vulpix isn't supposed to do any damage. Alolan Vulpix is supposed to just sit there and draw you extra Pokemon. Doing damage as well is just a handy bonus. I don't think there's any real question that Dragon Claw's good. But the number one question with Dragon Claw is it better than what we've already got? I mentioned this earlier, I alluded to this slightly earlier on in the video. As it stands at the moment, we have got Floatstone, which gives you free retreat, and we have got Choice Band, which means your attacks do an extra 30 damage to active EXs and GXs. Well, they're both incredibly good. So if you go and play Dragon Claw, you've got to do so at the expense of one of these other really good tool cards. And you might not want to. A lot of decks and a lot of players are probably going to be alright saying, you know what, I will take the guaranteed 30 damage to GXs and EXs rather than the, I think I can get my opponent to take 30 extra damage by attacking me. And it's these kind of decisions that Dragon Claw is going to give us. With the options we've got at the moment, I can't sit here and tell you that Dragon Claw is definitely the play. But I can absolutely tell you that it is worth considering, that it is something to bear in mind, and that it is a card that I expect to see quite a lot of play. We saw with decks like Greninja and my old favourite Garchomp, back when Bursting Balloon was around. It was a great little card which allowed you to hit the numbers. These were decks that were good, but sometimes fell a little bit short, didn't do quite enough damage, especially to non-EX, non-GX Pokemon. So what you would do here is use Bursting Balloon to supplement the damage so you could get the KOs. And maybe we are moving into a format with more of these. We've seen Zoroark GX decks start to play quite a few of the non-GX Zoroark, and that means that Choice Band isn't going to do much. We've seen cards like Garchomp and Empoleon coming out lately that admittedly have yet to set the format on fire, but certainly have the potential to do so. I really like this card, and even if it doesn't see any play, and I personally believe it will, but even if it doesn't see any play, it's always going to be a card that's sitting there that people can play. This isn't like one of those tech Pokemon where I legitimately think it might see play in the future. This is a card that I am certain will see a fair amount of play. It goes back to the old adage that I've espoused on many a video. Doing extra damage is always good. It's why Choice Band is good. It's why Crobat G was good back in the day. It's why Bursting Balloon was good. And it's why Dragon Claw is good. And when you add that all up, this is a 4-Wassy card. It is going to see play, and any deck where you really don't want to play Choice Band, I really do think this is a no-brainer instead. The other thing to remember is, and we're looking quite a bit into the future here, but the rotation 2018 is likely to be, by which I mean gonna be, Sun and Moon on. But the rotation in 2019 is probably going to rotate Guardians Rising, because it will be the second legal set, but it won't rotate this, which means we should have a format or two where this is legal and Choice Band isn't, making it really good in that format. But as of all of these, ladies and gentlemen, I need to hear your thoughts on this particular card, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, but be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. Do check out my other channel, Wassy Plays, where we will be doing Dragon Ball Super TCG content, as well as a whole bunch of other video games. And if you want to support the channel and get some bonus podcasts, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio. That, ladies and gentlemen, is where that happens. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.